Tara Grant had been missing for a month when police showed up at the suspect's door. They had a warrant, and he had no choice but to get out of their way. As detectives searched every square inch of the home, they realized everything was, well, spotless. But their search soon led them to the garage. Everything was strewn around like any normal garage. It was a bit of a mess, but nothing too crazy. But soon they noticed a trash bin in the corner. Inside the bin were several large black bags, pretty normal stuff, until an investigator touched one of those bags. It was weirdly soft, but also firm and heavy. As detectives hesitantly opened the bag, they were met with an undeniable odor and the discovery of a crime scene. Welcome to True Crime Stories. If you're new here, I'm your host, Ty Knotts, and I post new true crime documentaries every single week. So if you're interested in classic true crime without a bunch of AI or drama, hit that subscribe button. It's totally free and just keeps you up to date with all my future videos. Tara Lynn was born in Perkins, Michigan. Her parents, Mary and Gerald, also had another daughter named Alicia. Growing up, Tara was defined as a sweet girl with a contagious smile, and she and her sister got along really well. She had a super normal childhood, being a small-town girl with big dreams. In high school, Tara was quite athletic, participating in cheerleading, basketball, and track. She also played the clarinet in the school band. If that wasn't enough, Tara was also very smart and got great grades. Tara wanted to one day run her own business, so after high school, she enrolled in Badenoch Community College in Escanaba, but later transferred to Michigan State University, where she would study business administration. Fast forward to 1995. Tara worked at a company called Washington Group International in their downtown Detroit office. Because of Tara's work ethic and bright personality, it was only a matter of time before she got promoted to being an executive in the company, which she was thrilled about. Life was going pretty well for her. While Tara was completing her degree at Michigan State University, her friends introduced her to a man that they thought she'd get along with pretty well, Stephen Grant. Stephen's dad had a tool shop, and at the time of meeting Tara, he was studying politics. Stephen immediately fell for Tara, constantly asking her out, but Tara, on the other hand, wasn't quite ready for a relationship. She saw nothing wrong in Stephen. She was just at a place in her life where she didn't really care to have a relationship, which is understandable. But Stephen kept insisting that she go out with him, and even after one date, Tara wasn't so sure about starting a relationship with Stephen. Still, Stephen was relentless. Well, it wasn't until something else drew the two close that they really got to know each other, and that was grief. See, Tara's grandmother had tragically passed away, and this news really shook Tara to the core. Her grandmother's funeral was a couple of hours' drive away from Michigan State University, and Stephen stepped up and went to comfort Tara and just be there for her. This was the turning point for whatever blossomed between Tara and Stephen, because she saw how caring and selfless Stephen really was, and she eventually returned his feelings. The couple moved to an upscale neighborhood in Detroit, and after getting married, they welcomed their first child, a baby girl named Lindsay, in 2000. 2 years later, the family of 3 grew to 4, with the addition of a baby boy named Ian. So Tara was happily married to Stephen, and the two had 2 beautiful children together. At this point, Stephen wasn't working his dream job. He wanted to pursue politics, and he even worked with a senator when he and Tara were dating. But after moving to their family home, Stephen decided to help his dad out with the family tool business, and it was a pretty flexible job. Now, this was not a huge worry, since Tara was earning pretty good money, and since she got promoted to executive, she'd be able to travel all around the world. And in 2007, she was actually working in one of Washington Group's Puerto Rico offices. Stephen, on the other hand, had basically become a stay-at-home, part-time working dad. With Tara's busy schedule of working in Puerto Rico during the week and flying back to Michigan on the weekends, the arrangement worked out pretty well. At some point, the couple also hired a 19-year-old German au pair, or a live-in nanny, named Verena Dirks. She was to help Stephen out while he was gone to the tool shop. Stephen would take the kids to school, practice, and other places, and then Tara would then help shoulder these responsibilities when she was home on the weekends, with the au pair helping out during the week. So all in all, Tara and Stephen's lives were great. Things at home were working out great. They were happy and they were peaceful. That was until Valentine's Day of 2007 rolled around, and Tara was nowhere to be found. February 14th, 2007 was the day when the Macomb County Sheriff's Office received a call from a man. He wanted to report his wife missing. For context, she'd been missing for 5 days at this point, and the husband hadn't heard from her. If you hadn't guessed already, the man making the call was Stephen Grant, reporting his wife, 34-year-old Tara, missing. Well, I'm sure you're confused about why Stephen called 5 days later to report Tara missing. The investigators had the same question for him. Stephen said that it wasn't Tara's first time leaving home, and that she'd done it in the past too, which was why he wasn't quick to call the detectives the very day she went missing. Even though it didn't curb the police's suspicion, they decided to talk to Stephen to get more information about Tara and the day that she went missing. It turned out that Tara returned from Puerto Rico on the evening of February 9th, and the couple got into an argument, after which Tara stormed out of the house while talking to someone on the phone, telling them that she'd meet them at the end of the driveway before just driving off. Well, the police started their search for Tara, and initially Stephen went out of his way to cooperate, even making media appearances and begging Tara to come back to him and the kids. The detectives soon decided to reach out to everyone Tara knew and see if they had any clues about where she may have gone. They checked plane tickets and airline details to see whether Tara had flown somewhere or not. The investigators also looked into her credit card history, and nothing was touched. It seemed as though Tara had abandoned everything and just left. Stephen also came forward with some interesting information. He claimed to have seen email exchanges between Tara and her boss. According to Stephen, the emails were flirty, indicating that she might have been having an affair. This only thickened the plot. Did Tara leave her family for a secret lover? Was the argument between the husband and wife about Tara's supposed affair? Was Tara's mystery man somehow behind her radio silence? The detectives had tons of questions going through their minds. They also talked to Verena, the 19-year-old live-in nanny to Stephen and Tara's kids, and she also corroborated Stephen's story. She said that Tara had stormed out of the house after an argument. The police also checked Tara's phone records, and they found multiple texts and voice messages from Stephen asking where Tara was, if she was safe, and asking her to come back. But this is where things started to shift a bit. Things are about to get a lot worse. Now, the detectives were already quite suspicious of Stephen, and it stemmed from the fact that he waited those 5 long days before reporting his wife missing. His reason was just weird and unconvincing. Spouses are generally really worried about their partners going missing, and they don't wait for even a day before making a beeline for the police station. But Stephen's behavior was just bizarre. On top of that, his media appeals were also bizarre. His entire demeanor just felt strange, and he never really even shed tears for his wife, even after she'd been missing for more than a week. He was concerned, yes, but you'd think he should be completely distraught. But he wasn't. This was why investigators wanted to bring Stephen into the station for a polygraph test, and that was when Stephen closed all the doors of cooperation. He flat out denied giving a polygraph test, and he immediately lawyered up. Stephen also stopped asking the police for updates on the case, and in fact he would only ask reporters for any recent progress in his wife's disappearance, which again was just super weird. The detectives analyzed every word Stephen said during these media interviews, and at one point they caught Stephen referring to Tara in the past tense. This is never a good sign. Stephen would talk badly about Tara as well, his missing wife, and make uncalled for remarks about her, like how he was the perfect dad, how Tara was gone all the time, and it was just uncalled for, and everyone was starting to get confused. Was he upset that she was gone, or was he happy about it? His emotions just kept flipping. Stephen soon stressed that he sacrificed his dreams to take care of the kids so that Tara could work. But Stephen is clearly forgetting the memo that pretty much all parents have to do this at some point. Your kids come first. Marriage and kids demand compromise, and it wasn't like Tara was happy about the situation either. I mean, yes, she loved her job, but she also hated leaving her family behind. But when you're trying to support your family and work, then there are some places where everyone has to give up something. Also, Stephen did work, just not in politics like he dreamed about. And considering the family had hired a nanny to basically take care of the kids 24/7, his claims of giving up his dreams for them, well, it doesn't hold water. In the eyes of many people, he could have easily worked a full-time job and the kids would have been just fine. I say all of this to say, Stephen's behavior, it just didn't make any sense. But if all of that wasn't weird enough, another part of Stephen's past made its way to the police station. And it was an ex-girlfriend, who Stephen had been dating while Tara was out of town. Stephen's ex-girlfriend came forward to the detectives and confessed that Stephen had reached out to her via email sometime right before Tara's disappearance. They talked back and forth, and their conversations took a very flirtatious turn. Although they never met up for physical relations, he did confide in his ex about how he thought that Tara was cheating on him, and how marriage is like a speeding ticket, and you just need to keep an eye out on the road to avoid detection. Now, this statement alone tells you everything you need to know about Stephen. But there's more to Stephen's infidelity, but we'll get to that in just a bit. But anyway, the police were on to Stephen, especially since he loved to chat, and there was one particular place he kept mentioning over and over again. It was Stony Creek Park. It was a regular place the family visited, and the detectives just had a very bad feeling about this place. They just knew that they were going to find something here. And, well, they did. On February 28th, the investigators finally found something. It was actually a woman who was taking a walk in the park, and she came across a plastic bag. The woman approached the bag, and she could make out what looked like white latex gloves and a disturbing sight of what appeared to be blood. The police were immediately called, and when the bag was thoroughly checked, it also had weird metal shavings in it. When forensic tests were run on the gloves and the metal shavings, they had Tara's DNA on them. This was disturbing, and police now knew that the chances of finding Tara alive were not very high. By March 2nd, the police obtained a search warrant for Stephen and Tara's home. We don't know what specifically allowed police to obtain this warrant, but considering how suspicious they were of Stephen by now, I don't think it would take a judge too much convincing to sign a warrant. When police arrived at the home with that warrant, Stephen just stepped out of the way, with some reports saying that he left to walk his dog. They searched every single room, every nook and cranny inside this home, but there was nothing to be found. Until they reached the garage. Unsatisfied with their findings in the rest of the home, detectives took a particular interest in the garage. This was the last room that could provide any clues, any evidence at all about where Tara may have gone. As they dug around through the garage, it was a bit of a mess. It wasn't like a hoarder's house or anything, but there was junk everywhere. But I think most of us can relate to this when it comes to our storage areas. But as they dug deeper, they found something. There was a trash bin that looked like it had been pushed up in the corner. Black plastic bags filled up the entirety of the bin, some containing the same gloves and metal shavings that were found at Stony Creek Park. Police dug through each and every bag until they came to one particular bag that they would have preferred to really not open. As one of the officers grabbed the bag, he immediately knew what he had found, but he had to open it anyway. As he tore the bag open, he was met with that all too familiar smell. He peered inside and spotted a fully clothed torso. It didn't take long for the police to realize they were looking at the remains of 34-year-old Tara Grant. It was such a horrific sight for the police, and they knew that Stephen was most likely behind this heinous act. It took the investigators 2 days before they were able to track Stephen down. It turns out he didn't just leave to walk his dog, he'd fled in order to evade the law. But it didn't take police all that long to track him down. They were tracking Stephen's phone because he made a call to his sister, and it led the investigators to northern Michigan's Wilderness State Park, which was about 200 miles away from the Grant family home. Stephen was found leaning against a tree, suffering from hypothermia due to a lack of warm clothing. He also had alcohol, pills, and a fake firearm in his possession. From the looks of it, Stephen was contemplating ending his life. Not with the weapon, obviously, but with the pills and alcohol. Well, thankfully, that didn't happen. Although Stephen was out of it, hallucinating in the cold, he was taken to Northern Michigan Hospital to be nursed back to health before he could be brought to the police station. But the detectives needed to know why he did what he did to Tara. In Northern Michigan Hospital, on a hospital bed, Stephen talked to the detectives and confessed to ending his wife's life. According to Stephen's version of events, Tara had arrived home after a long week of work, and a very angry Stephen decided that right now would be the best time to fight with his wife for spending way too much time at work with a coworker. Now, we don't know whether Tara was having an affair with someone or not, but the fact that these accusations came from Stephen of all people, well, it just felt gross. Now, you might be thinking, Stephen wasn't really that bad of a husband, if you exclude the whole murder thing, that is. After all, he never had any physical relations with the aforementioned girlfriend. It was all just flirtatious talk. But here's the thing. Stephen was having an affair with not only his ex, but also the 19-year-old au pair, Verena. The two had gotten physical many times, even though Stephen claimed that they never went all the way, as if that made anything any better. Stephen, whose main job was to stay home and take care of the kids while his wife went to work, couldn't even manage to simply remain faithful through it. He had not one affair, but two, and at the same time. This is why we don't really know what the argument was about on the evening of February 9th. It's assumed that maybe Tara caught wind of Stephen's infidelity and was planning on leaving with the kids, but we'll never know the truth for sure, and I'm sure Stephen is not the most reliable person in the room to take his word for anything. But anyway, during the argument, Stephen pushed Tara, causing her to hit her head against a wall. This was when Tara angrily announced that she was leaving with the kids and that Stephen would never see them again. Well, this was the final straw for Stephen, and he lunged at Tara and ended her life with his bare hands, with their kids sleeping in the next room. Young Ian and Lindsay were completely unaware that their dad was in the next room a couple of steps away, ending their mother's life. It's just something no one can ever look back on without getting traumatized. Stephen then dragged Tara to his truck and drove up to the family's tool shop, where he dismembered his wife's body and loaded the parts up in plastic bags before burying his wife's body parts in Stony Creek Park. But Tara's body was not found at Stony Creek Park. Well, that's because when Stephen found out that the investigators would be searching the park for evidence, he went back, dug up Tara's body, and relocated it back to the family tool shop. It wasn't until March 1st when Stephen was worried that the body would start to decompose, and then he took the body to his and Tara's home and stuffed it in the garbage bin in the garage while in the midst of finding another place to hide the body, or whatever's left of it, for good. Luckily, the detectives got to the garage before Stephen had time to relocate the body again, and that was how they discovered Tara's dismembered body. The most chilling part of this whole crime, other than the fact that it was just downright brutal and inhumane, was how Stephen was confessing to the whole thing. He was talking about his wife's murder like it was a normal Tuesday, even chuckling at certain points in the story, like he just spilled his coffee on the way to work or something. It was just so unsettling for the police to sit through Stephen's confession because, to him, it was so nonchalant. He really just genuinely didn't care. After his release from the hospital, he was handed over to the Macomb County deputies, and on March 6th, 4 days after he was found almost frozen in Michigan's Wilderness State Park, Stephen Grant was formally charged. In April of 2007, Stephen's confession was made public, and it was actually because of this that everyone got to know about his affair with 19-year-old Verena. By December 21st, 2007, 9 months after confessing to killing his wife, Stephen Grant was found guilty of second-degree murder, and he was sentenced to a minimum of 50 years and a maximum of 80 years in prison. He tried to appeal the sentences because he claimed that his confession was wrongfully taken by the detectives because he was in the hospital getting treated for hypothermia. But the judge upheld the conviction, so Stephen Grant will be behind bars, hopefully for the rest of his life. In the end, Tara's sister Alicia and her husband Eric took Tara's kids under their wing and raised them as their own in Ohio. I hate that these kids were forced to grow up without either of their parents, but if there's any silver lining, these kids were incredibly fortunate to have at least had close family members who were willing to take them in, because no one wants to end up in foster care, and certainly not in a government-funded facility either. As police were finally buttoning everything up, one person kept coming to mind. The investigators thought that Verena may have had something to do with Tara's passing. The detectives thought that she was an accomplice, but other than engaging in an affair with a married man, Verena really had no idea that Stephen had callously ended his wife's life, as she wasn't even at the family home when it took place. Stephen fed Verena lies and promises, and the young nanny fell for it, but she didn't really have anything to do with Tara's murder. But one of the most heartbreaking pieces of this story was yet to come. On June 13th, 2008, about 6 months after Stephen's sentencing, Stephen's dad, William, took his own life. He was never able to recover or cope with the idea that his own son, a child he helped raise, became a killer. To make things worse, his son was a partner in his business, and to make things worse still, Tara's body was dismembered in that very business, in that very building. It was haunting. As for Tara's kids, who have their mother's signature brown curly hair, well, they've grown up since that tragic night and have made it their life's mission to take Tara's legacy forward. Lindsay in 2021 was 21 years old, studying pediatric psychology at The Ohio State University, whereas Ian was a freshman at the University of Wisconsin. They return to their hometown every year for Tara's Walk, which is a 5K trek to raise awareness against domestic violence and escaping violent relationships. The kids have no desire to speak to their father, the murderer of their mom. As far as we know, they haven't even spoken to him since the day he was sent to prison. Tara now rests in peace in Escanaba, Michigan, and friends, family, and loved ones spend time at her grave talking to her and missing her immensely. This case was just devastating. A hardworking mother of two had her whole life stolen from her by someone who promised to be by her side for better or for worse. Someone she was supposed to be building a life with and raising a family with. One monster, his jealousy, unchecked anger, and desires ruined a family forever, leaving everyone behind with scars that will never heal for as long as they live. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of True Crime Stories. I wanted to give a special thank you to a couple channel members, including Michelle Harris and Evan T. If you also want to become a member of the channel, you'll gain access to new videos sometimes days or weeks before they're uploaded to the public. And it is a great way to support the channel and help out. And I really appreciate all of you that have decided to do that. If you want to join, you can click that big join button below the video, or find the link down in the description. And don't forget, True Crime Stories t-shirts are also now available. You can grab one of those from a link down in the description as well. But as always, if you enjoyed this video, check out this other interesting case I covered. And don't forget to subscribe. It's totally free and just keeps you up to date with all my future videos. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.